The universe stretched endless and dark beyond the viewing port of Outpost 47. Captain Park Min-ho had been staring into that darkness for the past hour, nursing his third cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The small station orbited a dying star in a sector so remote that supply ships came only twice a year. Another exciting day in paradise, he muttered to himself, the irony thick in his voice. Min-ho had been stationed here for 3 years now, and the routine had become mind-numbing. Wake up, check the automated mining platforms, review communication logs, eat synthetic protein bars, and repeat. The 12-person crew had gotten so used to each other that they could predict what everyone would say before they said it. But today felt different somehow. The communications officer, Lee So-ra, hadn't cracked a single joke during the morning briefing. She usually kept everyone entertained with her terrible puns about space and mining. Even Kim Tae-sik, the engineering chief who could fix anything with duct tape and determination, seemed unusually quiet as he tinkered with some equipment. Min-ho made his way to the command center, his footsteps echoing in the narrow corridors. The station wasn't meant to be comfortable, just functional. Every surface was metal, every corner sharp and practical. Home, sweet home. So-ra, anything interesting today? He asked, settling into his worn captain's chair. She looked up from her console, her usually bright expression shadowed with concern. Sir, I've been picking up some weird signals. They're different from anything we've seen before. Different how? The frequency patterns don't match any known human or natural phenomena, and they're getting stronger. Min-ho felt a chill run down his spine. In 3 years of monitoring deep space, they'd encountered plenty of cosmic radiation, pulsar emissions, and the occasional garbled transmission from distant human colonies. But nothing that So-ra would describe as weird. Show me, he said. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a complex waveform that resembled nothing in their databases. The pattern was too regular to be natural, too organized to be random noise. How long have you been receiving this? Min-ho asked. About 6 hours. It started weak, but it's been getting progressively stronger. Sir, if I didn't know better, I'd say something big is heading our way. Kim Tae-sik looked up from his workstation. Define big, So-ra. She ran some quick calculations. Based on the signal strength and rate of increase, I estimate we're talking about something at least the size of a battleship. Maybe bigger. The command center fell silent except for the gentle hum of the station's life support systems. Min-ho studied the readings, his mind racing through possibilities. Merchant vessels? Unlikely they'd have standard identification codes. A lost military ship? Possible, but why no response to their hails? Have you tried to make contact? He asked. Every 15 minutes since 400 hours. No response on any standard frequency. Min-ho stood up, pacing the small space. Something about this situation triggered an old memory from his academy days. During one particularly boring lecture about frontier security, an instructor had mentioned something about deep space installations serving a dual purpose. Tae-sik, he called out. What do you know about the lower levels of this station? The engineer looked puzzled. Lower levels? Sir, we've got the mining platform controls in sub-level 1, storage in sub-level 2, and that's it. Why? Have you ever been to sub-level 3? Sub-level 3? Captain, there is no sub-level 3. I've been through every maintenance tunnel in this place. Min-ho felt that chill again, stronger this time. So-ra, pull up the original station blueprints, the ones from Earth Command. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. After a moment, her face went pale. Sir, according to these schematics, there are 5 sublevels. We've only ever had access to the first 2. The unknown signal pulsed stronger on the screen, as if mocking their discovery. Min-ho's mind raced back to academy training, to whispered rumors about frontier stations doubling as testing sites for experimental weapons. Projects too dangerous to test near populated worlds. Sir, So-ra's voice was barely a whisper. I'm detecting multiple contacts now, dozens of them, all using that same unknown frequency. On the screen, the sensor display showed a constellation of red dots approaching their position. Too many to be a merchant convoy, too organized to be space debris. Min-ho realized that their forgotten outpost, their boring assignment at the edge of nowhere, might not have been forgotten at all. They might have been placed here for a reason. A very specific reason. "Red alert," he announced, his voice steady despite the fear crawling up his throat. "All hands to battle stations." The klaxons began to wail, shattering the peaceful monotony of Outpost 47. As his crew scrambled to prepare for the unknown, Minho wondered if they were about to discover why 12 people had been left alone on the frontier with technology. They didn't fully understand. The darkness beyond their viewing port suddenly seemed less empty and far more threatening. The red alerts had been screaming for 2 hours when the first alien ship materialized on their sensors. Minho stared at the display in disbelief. The vessel was enormous, easily 10 times the size of Outpost 47. Its surface seemed to ripple like liquid metal, and energy patterns danced across its hull in ways that defied everything he knew about physics. "My God," whispered Sora, her hands frozen over her console. "It's beautiful." "Beautiful things can still kill you," muttered Tasik from the engineering station, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. More ships began appearing, flickering into existence like ghosts becoming solid. Within minutes, the small outpost was surrounded by a fleet that could have leveled entire planets. Minho counted at least 30 vessels, each one radiating power that made human technology look like stone tools. "Incoming transmission," Sora announced, her voice cracking slightly. On screen, the main display shifted, and suddenly they were face to face with something that was definitely not human. The being's features were vaguely humanoid but stretched and elongated, as if someone had pulled a person like taffy. Its skin had a metallic sheen, and its eyes were deep wells of swirling darkness. "Greetings, primitive ones," the creature spoke, its voice carrying harmonics that made everyone's teeth ache. "I am Commander Vex of the Dominion Fleet. You have the honor of witnessing the beginning of your species' absorption into our collective." Minho stepped forward, fighting every instinct that screamed at him to run. "I'm Captain Park Minho. This is a research station. We're not armed." A sound that might have been laughter echoed from the speakers. "Your deception is amusing. We have observed your kind for some time. Your pathetic defenses, your primitive technology. You exist at our sufferance. We haven't done anything to you," Minho said, keeping his voice steady. "We're just miners and researchers." "Irrelevant. Your system contains resources we require. Your species will be cataloged and repurposed. Resistance is futile and will only increase your suffering before the inevitable." The alien's image leaned forward, its features becoming more distinct and more terrifying. "We grant you 1 rotation of your planet to surrender. Submit, and your death will be swift. Resist, and we will make examples of you that will echo across your pathetic civilization." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. "Well," Tasik said finally, "that could have gone better." Minho felt his crew looking at him, waiting for orders, for some kind of plan that would get them out of this impossible situation. The problem was he had no plan. They were 12 people against an alien armada that could probably destroy their entire solar system without breaking a sweat. "Options?" he asked, though he didn't expect many good answers. "We could try to run," suggested Lieutenant Choi Soo-jin, the station's tactical officer. "In what? Our mining shuttles?" Taisik shook his head. "Those things barely have enough range to reach the next asteroid belt." "We could send a message to Earth Command," Sora offered. "The nearest human settlement is 3 months away at fastest possible travel," Minho replied. "We'd be space dust long before anyone could reach us." He walked over to the viewing port and stared out at the alien fleet. The ships hung there like predators waiting to pounce, their alien geometries hurting his eyes when he tried to focus on them too long. 24 hours, he muttered to himself. "What was that, sir?" Soo-jin asked. Minho turned back to his crew. "They gave us 24 hours, so we use every minute of it." "Use it for what?" Sora asked. Instead of answering, Minho walked over to a rarely used console in the corner of the command center. During his years of monitoring communications, he'd noticed patterns in the transmissions from Earth. Coded messages hidden within routine maintenance requests. Supply ship manifests that never quite matched the cargo they delivered. Taisik, he said, you mentioned we'd never explored below sublevel 2. That's right, sir. Access is restricted. Restricted by what? The engineer looked uncomfortable. The computer systems. They require authorization codes we don't have. Minho smiled grimly and began typing on the console. Actually, I think we do. He'd memorized several code sequences over the years, fragments of encrypted messages that he'd assumed were routine security protocols. Now, he wondered if they were something more. The first code he entered was rejected, so was the second, but on the third attempt, something clicked. Access panels throughout the command center began lighting up with displays they'd never seen before. Sub-level access granted, the computer announced in a voice none of them recognized. Suddenly, new systems came online. Weapon systems, defensive screens, power generators that had been dormant for years. The screens filled with technical specifications for equipment that clearly wasn't standard mining gear. Holy, Taisik breathed, staring at the readouts. Sir, these aren't mining lasers. These are military-grade plasma cannons. And this, Sora added, pointing at another display. This looks like a faster-than-light communications array. Not for receiving messages, for sending them. Minho felt pieces clicking into place in his mind. The remote location, the classified equipment hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy, the skeleton crew that was just large enough to operate the facility, but small enough to keep secrets. We're not just a mining station, he realized aloud. We're a weapons testing facility. The alien commander's words echoed in his head. Your pathetic defenses, your primitive technology. But maybe their technology wasn't as primitive as it seemed. Maybe humanity had been preparing for this day longer than anyone realized. Minho turned to his crew, seeing new determination in their eyes. 24 hours, he repeated. Let's make them count. He activated the encrypted communications array, broadcasting a message that would change everything. As the signal spread across human space carrying news of the attack, Minho prepared to show the Dominion that they had seriously underestimated what humanity was capable of. The war was about to begin, and it wouldn't be the easy conquest the aliens expected. The emergency beacon from Outpost 47 reached Earth Command at 14:37 GMT on a Tuesday afternoon. Admiral Yoon Hae-won was reviewing supply requisitions when her aide burst into the office. Without knocking, something that never happened unless the world was ending. Admiral, we've got a priority alpha message from the frontier. Lieutenant Commander Bae Jinwoo gasped, still catching his breath. It's first contact, ma'am, and it's hostile. Hae-won dropped her stylus and stood up slowly. Show me. The palm. Holographic display filled her office with images that defied comprehension. Alien ships with impossible geometries hovering around a human outpost. Weapons fire that looked like liquid starlight. And in the corner, Captain Park Min-ho's steady voice delivering a report that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Repeat. This is Outpost 47. We are under attack by an unknown alien force calling itself the Dominion. They demand our surrender and the absorption of humanity into their collective. We have engaged with experimental weapon systems and are holding position, but we need immediate reinforcement. The message cut to static. How long ago was this received? Hae-won asked, though her voice sounded distant to her own ears. 18 minutes, ma'am. Given the distance, that means the attack began approximately 6 hours ago. 6 hours. An alien species had declared war on humanity 6 hours ago, and they were just now finding out about it. Hae-won felt the weight of every decision she'd ever made settling on her shoulders. Get me a line to the Security Council, all members, right now. Within 30 minutes, the most powerful people in human space were gathered in secure holographic conference. The President of the United Earth Alliance, General Song Mi-kyung of the Colonial Defense Force, Director Kwon Sung-ho of the Intelligence Division, and a dozen others whose faces were grim with the understanding that everything had just changed. We need options, President Chen Yu-jin said without preamble. How do we respond to this? With respect, Madam President, General Song interjected. The question isn't how we respond. It's whether we can respond at all. We haven't fought a real war in over 2 centuries. Our military is designed for peacekeeping and minor colonial disputes. Director Quan leaned forward. What about Project Lazarus? The room fell silent. Even through the holographic displays, Heywan could feel the tension spike. Project Lazarus was discontinued 20 years ago, the president said carefully. The research was discontinued, Quan corrected. The infrastructure remains, dormant but functional. Heywan knew about Lazarus. Every senior military officer did. It was humanity's contingency plan for exactly this scenario, a protocol that would transform the entire human civilization from a peaceful exploratory society into a war machine capable of fighting for its very survival. The social cost, General Song began, will be irrelevant if we're all dead or enslaved. Quan finished. Bluntly, President Chen closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they held a hardness that hadn't been there before. Admiral Yoon, I'm giving you emergency authorization to activate Protocol Lazarus. Full implementation. Ma'am, Heywan needed to be absolutely certain. You heard me, Admiral. Wake up the sleeping giant. 2 hours later, Heywan stood in the war room beneath Geneva, a facility that hadn't been used for its intended purpose since its construction. Ancient screens flickered to life as decades of dust was blown away by suddenly active air filtration systems. Broadcast the activation codes, she ordered. Across human space, things began to change with frightening speed. On Mars, automated, factories that had been producing consumer goods for 100 years received new programming. Assembly lines that had been making personal vehicles suddenly started churning out military transports. Textile plants switched from clothing to body armor. Dr. Cha Eun-ji, the lead researcher at the Lunar Genetic Enhancement Lab, stared at her new orders in disbelief. You want us to do what? She asked her supervisor. Enhance physical capabilities. For military applications, Dr. No Sang-woo replied quietly. Strength, speed, reaction time, endurance. The parameters are all in the brief. But the ethical implications are suspended under Protocol Lazarus. We're at war, Yoon-ji. Real war. On Titan, mining operations that had been extracting water and methane pivoted overnight to rare earth elements needed for weapons manufacturing. The miners themselves underwent rapid training on military protocols, their peaceful extraction techniques adapted for more violent purposes. Captain Lee Hong-dae commanded a patrol vessel in the outer system. His ship had spent 5 years deterring pirates and assisting stranded civilian ships. Now he found himself receiving combat modifications that would have been illegal the day before. Sir, his weapons officer, Petty Officer An Young-soo, reported with visible confusion. They're installing military-grade plasma cannons and something called a ship-killer torpedo system. I know, Hongdae replied, watching the modifications through his office viewport. By tomorrow, we won't be a patrol ship anymore. We'll be a destroyer. The transformation wasn't just technological, it was psychological. Humans who had lived their entire lives in a peaceful galaxy suddenly found themselves preparing for a war they barely understood. Children practiced air raid drills. Civilians learned to recognize the sound of military transports. Scientists, who had spent careers curing diseases, began working on biological weapons they prayed they'd never have to use. In her private quarters, Admiral Yoon received reports from across human space. Food production was being militarized. Entertainment networks were being converted to propaganda and communication systems. Universities were transitioning from academic research to weapons development. Admiral, her aide reported, we're receiving confirmation signals from all sectors. Protocol Lazarus is fully active. Estimated time to full military readiness: 6 months. Make it 3, she replied, staring at images from Outpost 47, where Captain Min-ho and his crew were still somehow holding the line. Our people don't have 6 months. As night fell on Earth, normal citizens looked up at stars they'd always seen as destinations for adventure and exploration. Now those same stars might hide alien warships bent on humanity's destruction. The sleeping giant was awakening, and it was angry. 3 months after the first alien attack, humanity had become unrecognizable. The galaxy that had once been filled with explorers, scientists, and peaceful traders was now crawling with warships, soldiers, and weapons that existed only in nightmares. On Europa, Dr. Lim Soo-young stood in what used to be her cancer research laboratory. The bright, sterile walls were now covered with tactical displays showing alien ship movements. Her team of medical researchers had been reassigned to something called Combat Enhancement Division. "Show me the results," she said to her assistant. Dr. Park So-bin. "The new formula increases muscle density by 40%, reaction time by 200%, and pain tolerance by an almost immeasurable amount," So-bin reported, reading from her tablet. "The subjects can function for 72 hours without sleep and lift 3 times their normal body weight." Soo-young nodded grimly. A year ago, she would have been horrified by such modifications. Now, with alien ships pressing closer to human space, every day, she saw them as necessary tools for survival. Side effects? Minimal in the short term. Long-term effects are unknown. We haven't had time for proper testing. "We don't have time for proper testing," Soo-young replied, watching soldiers line up for their modifications. "Set up the injection stations. Let's turn our people into something the aliens won't expect." Halfway across the galaxy, ship designer Kim Dong-woo had spent the last 3 months sleeping 2 hours a night. His peaceful exploration vessels had been replaced by machines of war that would make ancient armies weep. "The Hammer-class destroyers are coming off the line at 12 per day," his production manager Choi Jin-ai reported during their morning briefing. "The new Scorpion-class fighters are at 50 per day and the heavy cruisers are at 3 per week." Dong-woo studied the holographic display of his latest creation. Where once he had designed ships with comfortable quarters and observation lounges, now every cubic meter was devoted to weapons, armor, or life support systems. The latest destroyer had enough firepower to level a small moon. "What about the new weapon systems?" he asked. "The quantum torpedoes exceeded all expectations. The test shot punched a hole clean through an asteroid 50 kilometers wide," Ginny said, with a mixture of pride and horror. "And the nanite clouds? Even better. They can strip a ship to its basic elements in under 10 minutes. The aliens won't know what hit them." In the asteroid belt, Foreman Lee Hyun-soo supervised mining operations that had increased production by 500% in 3 months. His crews worked around the clock, extracting rare metals and elements needed for the war effort. Robots that had once been programmed for careful, precise mining now tore through asteroids with reckless abandon. "We've got another shipment ready for the weapons factories," his supervisor, engineer Yang Hee-won, called out over the noise of massive drilling machines. "Good. The foundries on Mars are saying they can't keep up with demand for armor plating," Hyun-soo replied, watching as automated haulers loaded tons of raw materials onto waiting transport ships. On Titan, the situation was getting desperate. Captain Oh Young-hwan commanded a makeshift defense fleet patrolling the outer system. His ships had been civilian vessels just months ago, passenger liners, cargo haulers, even research vessels. Now they bristled with hastily installed weapons and carried crews trained in weeks rather than years. "Contact bearing 270, his sensor operator Lieutenant Yu Sang-ho announced. It's not showing up on our standard sensors." "What do you mean?" "The ship's there, but it's like our equipment can't quite focus on it. It keeps shifting." Young-hwan gripped his command chair. The aliens had been adapting their technology faster than anyone expected. Each battle revealed new capabilities, new weapons, new ways to terrify the human defenders. "All batteries open fire," he ordered. The space around Titan lit up with weapons fire. Energy beams that could cut through battleship armor sliced through the darkness. Missiles with warheads that could crack planets raced toward their targets. But the alien ship flickered and twisted, avoiding most of the barrage. Then it returned. Fire. The weapons that struck Jung-hwan's ship weren't like anything they'd faced before. Instead of explosive force or energy beams, nanoscopic machines seemed to pour over the hull, disassembling the armor plating molecule by molecule. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, Sang-Ho reported. The damage it's spreading. All hands abandon ship, Jung-Hwan ordered, watching as his vessel literally dissolved around him. Back on Earth, Admiral Yoon Hai-Wan received constant reports of similar encounters. The aliens were learning from each battle, adapting their weapons and tactics faster than humanity could respond. Ma'am, her intelligence officer, Commander Ro Byung-gul, entered her office with a grim expression. We've analyzed the battle, data from the last 3 engagements, and the aliens are evolving their technology in real time. They're not just adapting, they're anticipating our next moves. Hai-Wan stared at the star charts showing alien advances. Red markers indicated lost human positions. Blue markers showed current defense lines. The red was growing faster than the blue. What's our production status, she asked. Weapons manufacturing is at 400% of peacetime capacity. Combat drug production is at 300%. Ship construction is at 500%. Food production is at 80%. That last number was the most worrying. As humanity poured everything into the war effort, basic needs were being neglected. Riots had broken out on several worlds as civilians struggled with rationing. Ma'am, another aide entered. Captain Min-ho from Outpost 47 is reporting something new. Hai-Wan straightened. Min-ho and his crew had become legends for holding their position for 3 months against impossible odds. The transmission crackled to life. Min-ho's face appeared on screen, older and more haggard than she remembered, but his eyes still held that determined spark. Admiral, we've discovered something important. The aliens aren't just adapting to our weapons, they're absorbing our technology. Each ship they destroy gives them new capabilities. Hai-Wan felt her blood run cold. No wonder the enemy was advancing so quickly. There's more, Min-ho continued. We've been monitoring their communications. They're not just trying to conquer us. They're studying us. They want to understand how we create, how we adapt, how we fight. To what end? Hai-Wan asked. They want to become us. But better. The transmission ended, leaving Hai-Wan staring at the star map. Humanity was locked in a race not just for survival, but for the right to remain human. And they were losing. But in shipyards across the galaxy, new vessels were taking shape. Ships designed not just to fight, but to adapt as quickly as the enemy. In laboratories, scientists worked on weapons that could evolve in real time. In training centers, soldiers learned to think like the enemy, while remaining unmistakably human. The machinery of war ground on, reshaping humanity with each passing day. The question was, would they still be human when the war was won? 6 months had passed since the first alien attack, and the war had transformed both sides beyond recognition. What began as a simple invasion had become something far more complex, a struggle for the very essence of what it meant to be human. Fleet Admiral Park Min-ho stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. The vessel bore little resemblance to anything that had existed before the war. Its hull rippled with adaptive armor that could change its properties in response to incoming weapons. The bridge itself seemed alive, with neural interfaces that connected directly to the crew's enhanced nervous systems. Status report, Min-ho ordered, his voice carrying new harmonics from the vocal modifications that allowed him to process multiple communication streams simultaneously. Lieutenant Colonel Choi Soo-jin, his tactical officer, responded through their shared neural link. Her physical appearance had changed dramatically. Enhanced muscles, reinforced bones, and eyes that could see across multiple spectrums. All fleet elements are in position. Phase displacement generators are online. The Dominion fleet is massed around their staging world. Min-ho nodded, studying the tactical display that floated between them. The alien ships had evolved too. They were now grotesque amalgamations of their original technology, merged with captured human innovations. Some ships pulsed with organic-looking growths that were unmistakably human neural networks. Others bristled with weapons that used eerily familiar energy signatures. They learned from us, he murmured. But they made a mistake. Dr. Kim Tae-sik's voice crackled through the communication system from the engineering section. His team had discovered the flaw in the Dominion's approach 3 weeks ago. The aliens had been absorbing human technology and biology, but they hadn't understood the one thing that made humanity truly dangerous: their ability to choose their own evolution. Initiating the Cascade Protocol, Tae-sik announced. Across the human fleet, a transformation began that would have been unthinkable months ago. Ships that had seemed like conventional vessels suddenly revealed their true nature. Armor plating folded back to reveal weapons that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions the Dominion had never suspected. Crews connected to their ships through neural interfaces became something new, neither fully human nor fully machine, but a synthesis that was uniquely their own. On Earth, Admiral Yoon Hai-wan watched the battle unfold through quantum-entangled sensors. Beside her stood President Chen Yu-jin, Director Kwon Seung-ho, and the other leaders who had made the impossible decisions that led to this moment. "Are we still human?" the president asked quietly. Hai-wan considered the question. Their soldiers were enhanced beyond normal human capabilities. Their scientists had created weapons that bent reality itself. Their ships were hybrids of flesh and metal that responded to thought rather than touch. "We're what we chose to become," she answered. "That choice is what makes us human." In the battle zone, the Dominion forces realized too late that their enemy had become something they hadn't anticipated. The humans weren't just adapting to the war, they were evolving through it, becoming something new while somehow remaining themselves. Commander Vex's flagship, the Absolute Dominion, had grown to tremendous size by absorbing defeated human vessels. Its hull was a patchwork of human and alien technologies, its consciousness a merger of Dominion collective intelligence and captured human minds. "Impossible," Vex transmitted across all frequencies. "You were primitive. We studied you. We absorbed your strengths." Minho's response came not as words but as action. The human fleet phase shifted, existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. They attacked from angles that shouldn't have existed, using weapons that violated physics as the Dominion understood it. But the most devastating attack wasn't physical, it was philosophical. Dr. Lim Soo-young had spent months studying captured Dominion technology and biology. She had discovered that their collective consciousness had a fundamental weakness. It couldn't comprehend true individuality. The Dominion absorbed and merged everything, but they couldn't understand the value of distinctiveness. "Activating the individuality virus," she announced from her laboratory on board the flagship. The virus wasn't biological, it was a pattern of thought, a way of being that spread through the quantum connections the Dominion used for their collective consciousness. Suddenly, individual Dominion beings began experiencing something they had never felt before: the desire to be unique, to be themselves rather than part of a greater whole. Chaos erupted in the alien fleet. Ships turned on each other as newly individualized Dominion commanders made their own choices for the first time in their species' history. The collective consciousness shattered like glass, each fragment becoming its own entity with its own desires. "We surrender," came a transmission from Vex's ship. But it wasn't the unified voice of the Dominion. It was Vex himself, speaking as an individual. I choose to surrender, not for the Dominion, for myself." The battle ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The Dominion fleet, stripped of its collective purpose, scattered. Some ships fled to distant parts of the galaxy. Others, led by Vex, approached the human fleet with requests to learn more about this strange concept of individuality. Minho stood in the conference room of his flagship, facing Vex across a table that would have been impossible to imagine months ago. The alien commander had changed. His features were less predatory, more curious. The absorption of human elements had made him something between alien and human. "You won," Vex stated, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely sure what that meant anymore. "We survived," Minho corrected. "But more than that, we became what we chose to become. And us. What happens to my people now?" Minho considered the question. The Dominion ships that remained were requesting refugee status. Others had asked to join human research projects. A few had even suggested permanent integration between the species. "You become what you choose to become," he said finally. "That's the choice we're offering you." As the Defiant Dawn began its journey back to human space, Minho reflected on what they had all become. Humanity had faced extinction and responded by evolving themselves. They had enhanced their bodies, expanded their minds, and created weapons that defied natural law. But at their core, they remained human because they chose to be. They had kept their ability to make individual decisions, to disagree with each other, to grow and change while maintaining their essential nature. The war was over, but the future was just beginning. A future where the line between human and alien, between biological and artificial, between individual and collective, would be defined not by biology or technology, but by choice. Earth welcomed its heroes home, but it was welcoming them to a world that had been transformed as much as they had. Cities now rose into space connected by transport systems that used the same phase shift technology as their warships. Children attended schools where alien refugees learned alongside humans, both species exploring new ways of thinking and being. The galaxy would never be the same, but then again, neither would humanity. And for the first time in months, Minho thought that might be exactly as it should be. The new dawn had arrived, and it belonged to everyone who chose to be part of it.